There we go. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Fan Friction. I'm your host, Jack Shipley. We're glad to have you here with us today. Hello. We have a great show for you planned. We're going to ask some great questions like, what is the best movie that takes place primarily in space? Or who's the best character from a TV series introduced after the first season? So we got a great one here for you today. I'd like to take a moment to introduce our guests. Our first guest makes robots for a living, which I think is so cool. So she's going to win today. I'm just going to tell everybody right now. She's going to win. I'm trying to get in good with Skynet. Please welcome Kim Hanley.
Hi, everybody. It's great to be here.
Welcome to the show. We're really glad to have you. And by the way, if you haven't heard this already, everyone here is a first-timer, so we're glad to have you, Kim. Thank you for making it. Our second is a friend of the show and frequent guest on the Odd Shape panel you can find right here on TUFF. She's a big-time gamer and pop culture expert and a first-time fighter. Say hello to Candace McAfee.
Hey, guys. How are you doing?
Glad to have you. I hope I said your last name right.
Yes, actually, that's very rare. So kudos to you.
You provide internet security for me, so I appreciate everything that you do. And finally, you saw our last guest this past January on Screen Junkies Fan Fights, where she won her first episode, which is amazing. Now she's here to show you she can win in any arena. Please welcome Adry Sotolongo. Did I say it right?
That was good.
Right. Woohoo!
I'm excited to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us. Guys, if you hadn't seen Fan Fights on the Screen Junkies channel, please check it out. It's really cool. This past January, they took a bunch of fans, myself, Adry, you've seen Jonathan Youngblood, and a couple others. It was really great, and if you haven't seen it yet, it's a fantastic show, so check that out on the Screen Junkies channel. Finally, filling in for Ashley and Joe today, please welcome back to our show the co-host of Odd Shape Panel, and everyone's favorite Tom Bennis.
Hi. How's it going, everybody?
Welcome back, Tom. We appreciate you filling in today. I will say it for you. If you're not aware, guys, we follow along. Tom will follow along on Twitter. So please use hashtag #ThisIsTuff on Twitter. That's TUFF. And you can get in on the conversation. Tom will be reading some of your tweets here during the show. So we'd love to have you tweet in. He also checks the chat, so feel free to say things in YouTube. And without further ado, it's time to get the show started with round one. So we're going to do our current events round. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 opened this weekend in theaters. So, of course, we wanted to know, what is the best movie that takes primarily in space? So the only rule here is that it can't be on a planet in space the whole time. So Aliens, for example, is not a good choice, even though it's in space. It's pretty much on that planet. We want something that's mostly in space. So today we are going to start with Kim. Whenever you are ready, what did you pick?
Okay, for this, I went with the quintessential, by definition, space movie, Spaceballs. It takes your typical sci-fi space movie, boils it down to its core elements, and just delivers a big dose of comedy along the way.
Awesome. Candace, you'll be going second today. What did you pick?
I picked the 1979 classic Ridley Scott film, Alien. To me, it is a pretty transcendent horror film. It has inspired tons of fans and other movies and comic books and lots of awesome things like in franchises. And I think that it really is the standout winner in this category. Awesome.
One of my favorite films. And finally, Adry, what did you pick?
I picked Apollo 13. I think it's a beautiful movie that's really a celebration of human ingenuity. And I think it highlights the really treacherous nature of space, how it can be totally safe 1 second and just like that turn on you. So that's my pick.
Awesome, guys. Fight it out.
Okay, so everyone's got these, it's a landmark movie. It inspired other movies. But here's the thing with space movies. You want to get to the core of what it means to be a sci-fi movie, and nothing does that better than Spaceballs. You have Mel Brooks in his prime. He's taken cornerstone movies from the genre, taken their core elements, pulled them out, ripped them apart, put them back together as jokes, and delivered them to an audience like only he can. It's back when satire and parody movies were legitimate genre, back before Date Movie and Scary Movie 76 were things. And, he just delivers time and time again.
I would argue that he's not in his prime here, actually. This movie didn't come out until 1987, which was a decade after Star Wars was released. It was kind of overdone at that point, but I think that people really love Mel Brooks, and rightly so, because he's a comedic genius. And I think that people were excited about the cast, excited about something new and interesting. But honestly, it doesn't hold up. I rewatched it recently, and it's so good for nostalgic reasons. Like, I grew up watching it. It's definitely a favorite in my household. But to me, it's it's not. I mean, the jokes kind of lose their flavor. It's been parodied itself so much. And there have been so many jokes, told over and over again that now it's kind of like, it's humorous and you're like, oh, huh, that's wonderful. But it doesn't really take your breath away quite like it did, in my opinion, the first time that I watched it.
I have to disagree with you on that, because it absolutely holds up. You look at like the merchandising joke that runs throughout the movie. You have, you look at now, like Batman vs. Superman, they all had their own flavors of ice cream. Wonder Woman's got her Froyo flavor. So, to argue that the jokes don't hold up, I mean, that's just one recurring thread through the movie, and it's super relevant to how they market things today. I mean, we're getting a Cars 3 because it makes $1 billion in merchandising.
But then on the other hand, you have things like, sorry, go ahead.
Okay. I was just going to say that, I totally understand, but at the same time, I'm not just talking about the humor itself. I'm even talking about the devices that are used. Like, that was cutting edge comedy back then. Like, that whole, let me repeat this joke so that that this is the joke for the whole movie. Like, that long running gag thing was super, super hilarious. And it's very, very 80s. Like, it's a very 80s thing to do. And you kind of see Mel Brooks kind of go through that in his career. Like, personally, I think Young Frankenstein is the superior parody film. And I believe he was in his prime in the 70s with Blazing Saddles as well, back when he had his original core group together. But I think that, once you got into the 80s, you have this plot device that's been used time and time again. And like Family Guy, for example, Family Guy stopped being funny because they kept doing that running gag where in one episode, you'd have the same joke 6 times. And that's where it comes from. And it was funny the first time, but over time, now that you've seen all these other, examples of you reusing that and recycling that humor, it's just not as funny, in my opinion.
I'm not going to go as far as to say Spaceballs isn't funny, but I do think that, there are some jokes that are grown-worthy. I mean, surely Mel Brooks has had more creative moments than calling a character yogurt. And 2, as far as a movie, it's not a standalone movie. It's very hard for you to appreciate that one because it's so dependent on knowing Star Wars, on knowing these other movies. So how can I call something the best when it's so dependent on everything else?
To satire and parody, that's what the point of that genre is to boil down the cornerstones of it and deliver it in a new way.
And that's great, and it might be a contender if we were discussing what's the best parody film, but we're discussing films as a whole. And when you're discussing films as a whole, part of their weight should be, can I watch this movie as a standalone? And you really can't. It requires all this context and all this background. I also take offense to what you're saying that space should only be discussed in the context of sci-fi. I think what Apollo 13 does and does tremendously well is by showing you that a real story about our experiences in space are just as exciting and just as relevant and just as tension building as anything you can make in science fiction. And
Except I think a history movie has no stakes. We already know the outcome. They survived. You go into the movie, it's like going into Titanic and going, they hit an iceberg? I never saw that coming. You know the outcome before you even sit down and watch the credits, the fade in at the beginning of the movie. So the movie carries no weight to it because you're just watching them get from point A to the ultimate outcome of they live. We already knew that going in.
I think number one, you're giving the average audience tremendous it's a very nice gesture of you to assume that the general audience tends to know what has happened in our history, which I disagree with. And 2, if your standards are correct, then Titanic should have made no money at all since everybody knows how it ends. So I disagree with that. I do think historic movies do have stakes, and we continuously see it. This was a movie that was nominated for 9 Academy Awards, including 2 wins for technical achievements. It was nominated for Best Movie, Best Supporting Actor, Best Supporting Actress. I think it speaks for itself that it definitely had stakes, and it definitely resonated with audiences. More importantly, I think it's a movie, compared to Alien, which we just haven't discussed enough, I think it's a movie that space is an integral part of the story. Space and Alien is a plot device. Stick them in any place where they can't escape, and it's the same thing. It's just a function of we are locked in this area. Versus in Apollo 13, it's a dynamic element. So I do think in that sense, it also heightens the specifics of it being a space movie.
I completely disagree with you. I think that in Apollo 13, space is a secondary element. We're sitting here talking about and debating about the best movie, not the most nostalgic movie, not the movie that warms the cockles of your heart the most, but the best film that is set primarily in space. Primarily in space obviously would mean more than 50% of the film. 51% or more of the film is set in space, right? So I watched both of your movies, and Spaceballs, you spend a third of the film on a various planet, whether it's Druidia or whether it's planet Spaceball, right? So then in Apollo 13, that entire movie is just a back and forth conversation between space and Earth, and like the first 35 minutes of the movie are set on Earth, so you're primarily on Earth. But Alien, you only spend 25% of your time on the planet. Like, they get in, they get out, they get the job done, they pick up the alien. The reason that it's so terrifying, because here's the thing, like in Apollo 13, I understand what you're saying about space being, you know, this element, this movable element that you know, that people are interacting with. But in Alien, I mean, the tagline alone says it. In space, no one can hear you scream. The reason that that movie is so terrifying is because there is no chance. Like, there's no way they're getting out of there. It's not like other cheap, you know, knockoffs like Gravity, for example, which like goes out on this ridiculous tangent with, you know, this woman suddenly becoming this amazing astronaut out of nowhere. Like, no, they show these real people that are in space that are trying to do a job. And like, their very survival then comes down to the technology that they were like, that's sworn to protect them. You know what I mean? When Ash turns on them, right? They're even their support, like even their support is gone. They have nothing now. They're just, you know, out in space. They're adrift. You know, there's no hope of getting any kind of interaction from anyone else to like assist them in any way. I mean, even when they come upon that unknown planet, like they take a huge risk just going down there. So it's like, you know, at the end of the movie, you know, Ripley is left with, you know, very few options. This woman is like at her most vulnerable. She's in her underwear. She thinks she's gotten away. I mean, like it's a taut psychological thriller, and just like an amazing horror feature to think about the fact that like you're in space, you're caught out there, and there is absolutely no way out of your situation. Like,
also part of your argument.
Space is irrelevant once they're actually back on the ship and the alien starts kicking things off. It becomes a very claustrophobic, confined movie. You could put them on the bottom of the ocean, swap the location with Sphere, and you'd never know the difference until the end when they shoot the alien out of the airlock. The space element of it is completely irrelevant because they're confined to the claustrophobic nature of the ship. It plays no role in the movie beyond being the solution to the problem at the very end and being how they get the problem in the first place. Like,
it absolutely
the whole
does.
middle is irrelevant to space.
It isn't. It's not irrelevant to space at all, because first of all, if you were in a ship, right, you would be able to step outside. You'd be able to breathe the air. You'd be able to do other things. Like you can get off of a ship. Like
you're talking like a submarine on the bottom of the ocean scenario.
Even if you're talking about a submarine at the bottom of the ocean. If it were a movie set in a submarine at the bottom of the ocean, they wouldn't have happened upon some unknown planet and picked the alien up in the first place. It absolutely must be set in space, and it's terrifying.
The movie Sphere accomplishes the same thing. There's an alien craft on the bottom of the ocean. They go to explore it. They get exposed to an alien. All hell breaks loose, and they're trapped on the bottom of the ocean. It's the same general plot points.
That's the thing, though.
Without space,
but what Sphere is a plot point that should have been set in space, but the ships are now underwater. Like, it's still interacting with a spaceship. So even then, space is still a factor, because if space and the unknowable like masses around it and these other alien figures didn't exist, then you wouldn't have anybody from them meet at the bottom of the ocean. It's not as though Sphere is this movie about this like weird, you know, oceanic Atlantean underground dwelling, you know, mutant creature, and then they meet him there. No, they meet an alien from outer space who happens to have crash landed. So even then, space is an element. I mean, in Spaceballs, it's mostly a fantasy film.
So here's what I'd like to do. I want to go back. I want to get some final thoughts. Kim, I want to start with you. I want to know primarily. So everybody, I got your point, Candace, about space and their use of space. I liked how you had percentages. But everybody's movie counts. So at the end of the day, what I want to get from starting with Kim is, why is your movie better than Aliens and Apollo 13?
Okay, my movie achieves its objective. It takes the cornerstone elements of the genre, boils them down, and delivers comedy layered over top of it. You can say, oh, it's not my sense of humor, but it stands the test of time. People, when I just got done running a Star Wars half marathon, and there were people there dressed as Spaceballs, dressed as Dark Helmet. The movie holds up to the fan base of sci-fi as a genre and space as a genre. You know, when you look at Alien, the crew were dumber than a bunch of Crystal Lake counselors it was like getting chased around by Jason, only it's an alien instead of a guy with a machete. They were dumb as rocks the way they tried to handle the situation. And then you look at Apollo 13, and like I said, there was drama, but most of it was fictionalized drama. If you go to the actual event, the astronauts and NASA were incredibly calm. They had procedures in place that they were able to adapt to solve all the problems that they encountered. It wasn't this, oh my God, panic situation that they tried to make it out to be in order to make it an interesting movie. And you knew where you were going to get at the end. You knew they got home okay. So, it was an interesting 2.5 hours, maybe, but the best space movie, it didn't actually achieve anything.
Okay, Candace, final thoughts, same question. Don't forget you're muted.
I believe that Alien is the best. First of all, it's the oldest film, yet it's the one that bears the most cultural significance now. It was inducted into the National Library of Congress for being an outstanding achievement in film. It also appears as, I believe, in the top third of AFI's best 500, it's number 7 in AFI's top 10 sci-fi films and number 33 in Empire's best 500 films of all time. It features the most cast diversity, despite being the oldest film, which you would think that there would be more diversity in movies that are a little bit newer. It single-handedly launched the career of multiple Academy Award nominee Sigourney Weaver. It's so popular that it spanned franchises, spin-offs, merchandising, sequels, novels, games. I mean, I feel like the cultural significance of this is just, obvious. Spaceballs doesn't have any merchandising, neither does Apollo 13, and I would argue that Apollo 13 is perhaps the second best film set in space.
And before I go to Adry, I just want to say there was diversity in Spaceballs. There was a giant pizza monster, so I think, no, I'm kidding. Adry, final thoughts on Apollo 13.
So I stand with what I said. I think the Apollo 13 is a movie that you don't have to go to a science fiction genre to realize what is space and really explore it in a movie. I think, part of what Candace was saying was about how Alien somehow takes real people in this extreme situation. It doesn't get more real than Apollo 13. And it was real. I disagree with Kim in that. A lot of the script that was used in the movie was verbatim what was said between Mission Control and the space shuttle. That dialogue was real. The tension was real. All of the, the United States basically froze during that period. Everybody just glued on their TVs trying to figure out where these people were going to survive. So the drama was real then, and they recaptured that magic in the movie. I think it's one of Ron Howard's best movies. It's a movie that keeps the tension, keeps the stakes up, and is able to give tremendous clarity despite the technical nature of some of the issues. So it's detailed without being overwearing, and that way it captures. Compared to the other two movies, I don't think Spaceballs can hold up to the other two. It doesn't do as much in the ratings, and it doesn't do as much as a standalone movie. With regards to Alien, it's hard for me to judge Alien on the same par as Apollo 13, just because I don't even think it's the best movie of that genre. I would at least think that Aliens is better than Alien, and I know it wouldn't been eligible for this question, but I do think it is the better movie. And I think in a way, space is just a secondary plot device to what essentially boils down to lock them up in a place and see what happens.
Awesome. Well thought, everybody. Good job. Let's go to Tom and take a moment to get some facts and talk to our friends on Twitter.
As far as facts, I'm right here. As far as facts go, no issues. Ashley, usual fact checker, did want to point out that there was one smart member on the Aliens crew, and that was Jones the cat. Other than that, we got.
I actually had that as a bullet point that the cat was the smartest member of the crew.
Oh, you didn't say it for your argument. I'm not helping anybody. So we got a lot of picks from the crowd on Twitter. Raul can't believe no one picks Star Wars, but at the same time, we got praise that no one picked any of the big ones like Star Wars. David Bowman and Tom Zambino were like 2001. Why did no one pick this? And Eric Monroe said Critters 4. And then I have the poll from you whenever you're ready.
Critters 4, interesting pick. I think 2001, didn't 2001 like half the movies on Earth before they get into space, isn't it? So that's why I would think that one in particular probably wouldn't count.
I also think it's very polarizing for some people. I mean,
yeah, not everybody loves 2001. It's definitely polarized, especially because of the way they did the beginning. And okay, well, so we're talking about these three movies. Guys, I thought you fought this really well. I have a lot of notes. I guess if I'm going to pick one to be the third place winner, for me, even though it won a lot of nominations and awards, I think it's Apollo 13. I don't think I just heard enough about why it's a better movie than the other two movies. But I certainly made a good point. It's certainly a great movie. So for me, it falls down between Aliens and Spaceballs. And when I was making my determination of who would win this round, I think it came down to who took the most punches and had the most rebuttals. Because both of your arguments were really fantastic about your movies in general, but when Spaceballs was under a lot of fire in this round, you both went after it pretty hard. However, Kim had an answer for everything. It doesn't hold up. Yes, it does hold up. It has, it's still in the Star Wars run. Merchandising is a huge point of the entire thing. The point they were like, oh, it doesn't have a point. You're like, the point is satire, and that's what satire is supposed to do. It does. No stakes in the Apollo movie. Was the point that Kim made as well. I think Kim and the underwater comment with Sphere against Aliens was really fantastic, and that stuck with me the most because that was a great rebuttal. So for me, Kim gets the point. Well done, Kim.
Woo! I'm not getting shut out.
Fantastic. What did Twitter have to say?
Twitter
was there a
the
poll?
Poll said, 69% said Alien.
Yeah.
31% said Spaceballs, and a big goose egg for Apollo 13.
People should watch it. It's a great movie. I know it, like, for some reason it hasn't held up. Like, people just don't remember it, but it's so good.
It really is a great movie. Apollo 13 is fantastic.
Like, I saw Gravity, and I'm like, this is the pretty version of Apollo 13, except made up.
And the late Bill Paxton's in it, so you got to see it for that, if no other reason. But guys, fantastic job. So we are going to go and do our lightning challenge. Based on this first round. This is open to all three of you. So if you've never done the lightning challenge before, here's how it works. I'm going to ask you a question, and you're going to shout out the answer that you want. The person who says this, if two of you say the same thing, whoever said it first gets to pick it, and the other person has to pick something else. After all three of you have gone, we're going to have a 30-second chance to argue your point, and then a 20-second to get a rebuttal, and then I'll award an additional point for this round. So with that being said, here is your follow-up lightning challenge question. Which member of the Guardians of the Galaxy should join the Avengers? There's only 5.
Rocket Raccoon.
Gamora.
All right, so I heard Rocket. And that was, who said Rocket? Was that Adry?
I did.
Okay, and who said Gamora?
I did.
Okay, and then, sorry, Candace.
Let's go with Groot.
Groot. Perfect. And you're going to go in the order that I heard them. So that means, Adry, you'll have 30 seconds whenever you're ready. Listen for the buzzer and then stop talking.
Rocket Raccoon fits perfectly with the tone of some of the Avengers. They can do the fast-talking, intelligence speak that Tony Stark does. He can keep up with them. And given that some of these actors will be soon retiring, I think he fills in that very much needed quick dialogue role that will really keep the energy up in the Avengers.
You have 15 seconds.
Moreover, I do think that he brings a cuteness factor, which should not be discounted, and he has tremendous voice acting. He really interacts very well with other characters like Groot, and I can't wait to see him something like versus the Hulk, how that would play out.
It's so much longer, isn't it?
It's incredibly long.
Yep, it's like 30 seconds. Is way too much time when you compare that. Normally it's 20 and 10. Okay, Kim, Gamora, you were next. Whenever you're ready.
Okay, so one thing the Avengers has been severely lacking, and something that's been brought up time and time again, is that Black Widow always gets forced to the back of the bus. If you bring in another strong female superhero, the two of them can sort of bring themselves up a bit, move up a couple rows on the roster, and really start kicking some ass, and just, showing what they can bring to the team beyond just, that butt and face at the same time pose that they somehow managed to do.
Time. All right. Candace, you chose Groot. Whenever you're ready.
Okay, so I think that that Groot would be the perfect Avenger because right now the Avengers movies, I mean, they're not designed to be kid friendly. Obviously, they're designed for more of like the mid range of fans. But I think that Groot would bring a little bit of heart and personality to the Avengers. I think that right now you have a lot of like warring, alpha male dominant kind of characters that are fighting it out, and like that's super entertaining, and obviously that makes for excellent brawls. But I also think that like the softness and like the sweetness of Groot would also kind of give you a little something different to look at.
Awesome job, guys. All right, so now we're going to get 20-second rebuttals, starting with Adry whenever you're ready.
So I love the idea of bringing more women into the Avengers, but at the same time, I'm terrified of bringing Gamora in because I think Marvel would just use that as an excuse to not give Black Widow the time she deserves because she should be a front row seating headline woman. So I would disagree with you there. And I don't think Groot brings that much to the mix. Just having the cute factor and just saying that over and over again, he actually kind of bordered on annoying in the latest film for me at times.
Time. Okay, Kim?
Okay. The thing with Rocket is he's extremely abrasive. He barely gets along with the Guardians. He was trying to push them away with his actions all throughout number 2, and he's only now warming up to them. That quick talk stuff is very abrasive. As far as Groot's concerned, he's just another Hulk. You got a big, strong guy who doesn't say much. I'm not seeing what he adds. And with Gamora, she's going to pull Black Widow to the front with her. She's going to say, don't hang back.
Time. Okay, and Candace.
Rocket Raccoon is only cute because of Groot. Otherwise, like Kim said, he is extremely abrasive and a little bit hard to deal with. I think that Groot, unlike the Hulk, brings, like I said, like a lot of heart and kindness to everything. Gamora is very out of touch. She's kind of a cold shoulder. And I feel like what little heart the Avengers already, are fighting to have with, the addition of Ant-Man and Spider-Man.
It's tough. All right. I'm going to go to Tom here. Tom, you heard all the arguments. What would you pick as your winner in this early competition?
Well, I'm going to have to say that I haven't seen the new Guardians of the Galaxy 2, so I can't say whether or not like that weighs in on the current situation of the Guardians and how they sit. I mean, I like points from everybody, and everyone did a good job kind of shooting them down. One thing I really liked was the that Marvel's kind of just and a kid-friendly face wouldn't be horrible. And at the same time, I liked Audrey's argument, but I can't remember it exactly right now. But I made a point to it.
If you had to pick one, because I have to pick one.
I mean, yeah. Oh, that's what it was. Black Widow would be pushed back even more so. So I think the one with the less takedowns was Groot, I thought.
Okay.
Hulk is.
Yeah, I heard that he would be just another Hulk. And the only thing I wish I heard, Candace, is, well, that's what we need because Hulk is off doing something else. I was like, this is the perfect setup for you to say that.
He's coming back around, though. He's coming back around.
Yeah, but right now he's not in the Avengers. He's going to be in Thor, and we know he's going to come back around, obviously. But I was really torn. It's very close for me. But at the same time, I expected Audrey to say that Groot's nothing without Rocket because you need them to play on each other. And I didn't really feel like that was there either. And I agree with Kim that putting two females in the Avengers elevates both of them and gives both of them a chance to shine. I'm going to pick Kim. Well done.
There already are two females in the Avengers.
Who's the other one? Because I can't even
Black
think
Widow.
of it. Well, Black Widow.
I'm sorry, not Black Widow, Scarlet Witch.
Scarlet Witch. You know what? I forgot about Scarlet Witch completely. That's how not in the forefront she feels.
Black Widow steals the show.
And that's what's going to happen with Gamora.
It's tough. I'm going to give the point to Kim, but everybody still fought very well. So that means after one, Kim has 2 points. Well done. But there's plenty of points left to go as we enter round 2. Round 2 is our fan-submitted question. Eric Assenmacher at Bunker on Twitter asked this question. In honor of 3 brand new fighters, that's you guys, who is the best character from a TV series introduced after the first season? And I got to tell you guys, I'm really excited about this round. I love everyone's pick. I can't wait to see how this shoots out. So we are going to start with Candace. Candace, what did you pick?
I picked Toph Beifong from Avatar: The Last Airbender. We go a whole season without seeing this character, and at first you think like, oh, the show is really great. Like, what else could it possibly need? This core group is so strong. And then you meet Toph, and she really shakes things up. She serves as a nice counterpoint to Katara as a character, and I think that she is a really great role model for kids.
Awesome. Audrey, who'd you pick?
I picked Chris Traeger from Parks and Rec. I think his entrance into the series marked a pivotal point to the series. It meant them committing to a much more lighter, optimistic tone as a whole. And I think he's just an amazing character who blends like people obsessed with appearance and hipster hell things, but somehow is still likable. And for that alone is so commendable. So Chris Traeger is my pick.
Fantastic. And Kim, who did you pick today?
I went a little bit off the beaten path with my pick, and I chose Elmo from Sesame Street, a very well-known classic Sesame Street character who didn't get introduced until 1985, over a decade into the run of Sesame Street.
Awesome. This is going to be a great one, guys. Go ahead and fight.
I think that the lighter tone on Parks and Recreation is a little bit deceptive. Like Chris is a great guy. He's funny, all that stuff. He's handsome, whatever. And like that's something that you need on Parks and Recreation, especially as the contrast to Ben Wyatt, who I think is a better choice from that show. But he makes really poor decisions, like from start to finish. Like he's this guy that's really optimistic, but he's terrible. Like he doesn't recognize Ann Perkins for the gem that she is from day one, which he absolutely should, obviously. I also think he gets a little creepy sometimes, and he's rarely the jokester. Like he's usually kind of like the butt of the joke. And as far as his lighter tone, like when he gets broken up with by Millicent Gergich, like that guy spirals out of control, and he is dark and he is terrible and sad. And like it's funny for like a couple of episodes, but then you're just like, man, Chris, like brighten up, buddy. We miss the old you, which is saying a lot because he gets a little annoying.
But he's only down in that spiral for literally a couple of episodes, and it perks right back. And we all know people like that. That's what makes him so amazing.
No, it's a whole season.
It's not. It's literally
he's like that at the Valentine's Day dance. Like he's like that when he sleeps with Shauna Malwae Tweep. Like he's like that for like. I would say at least 6 to 12 episodes.
I think he is such a creative character in like piling together all these different trends, all these different like lifestyles, and everybody knows a person who has one of those characteristics. You've seen that person who spirals, and just being able to combine all these things into a coherent character is amazing. But more importantly, I think he's so important because of how he helps move the story along. Like his coming in means so much for Pawnee because it brings up those whole new plot issues with the financial issues in the city, but also in an interpersonal level with other characters, because he does challenge Ron Swanson's character into considering the positives of government, because he does make the tension between Ben and Leslie. If it's not because of Chris Traeger, they could have been frilly-nilly dating since day one. He's the one who sets the rules of the game for their early dating. So in a way, he progresses the story on multiple levels, and that's really what helps that season pick things up. Because season one is unwatchable.
But Ben Wyatt does the same thing. I mean, Ben is nothing without Chris, and Chris is nothing without Ben. Like, if Chris entered the show by himself, then that storyline would be moot. And if Ben entered the storyline without Chris, the storyline would be moot. So I don't think that, like, he's necessary. He's not a necessity to that show. Toph, on the other hand, is a necessity. Aang actually has visions of Toph before he even meets her. And he finds out that he needs an earthbending teacher. And, like, as the Avatar, he needs to he needs to master all 4 elements. And the only way that he's going to master earthbending is through Toph. And for me, Toph is such an incredible character because she's blind, and she teaches kids, like, not only to be tolerant of other children, but also any kid who might be having a hard time, who might, have any kind of disability or any kind of, special needs. Like, it shows them that, like, you don't have to be ashamed of who you are. Like, you are free to be who you are. I mean, she's imperfect. She's really sardonic. She serves as an awesome contrast to Katara, always nice, always happy. Same thing with the Avatar. Like, she kind of, like, smacks them down and, like, is that dose of realism that the show really needs. I think that the show would be too cloying and a little too sweet if they hadn't introduced Toph. I really believe that she completely changes the tone of the show. And I think that she's an awesome, complex female character. Like, Chris Traeger is a guy that's a city manager in Pawnee. Like, anybody could be Chris Traeger. Like, Elmo has been replaced by Zoe one year and Rosita another year. And, like, no one has ever been quite as big as Big Bird anyway. So, like, for him, I mean, yeah, he's awesome, but he's also kind of like, you know, a splash in the bucket.
A splash in the bucket for over 30 years?
Is a necessity.
You're out of your mind. I mean,
yeah, but Big Bird has been on the show for 40 years. He has a charity in his name. He helps children. His birthday is something that people celebrate in schools. He's a bigger and longer standing character. He has more featured songs on Sesame Street, whereas like TUFF is this character that really, you know, she invents. That's fine. She can be a bitch. Characters don't have to be nice, particularly female ones.
You can't relate to her.
But here's the thing:
you said she's a role model for kids.
You can't talk over each other, or I won't be able to hear either of your arguments. Kim, take a second here and let me finish your thought. I didn't hear what you said.
You pointed out that she was a role model in the opening statement, but how can someone that abrasive and unrelatable be a role model? You don't want to teach kids to behave the way that she does. She treats, especially when in that sleep deprivation period where they're getting chased, her true side comes out. All their true sides come out, and she's a horrible person during that time frame. You would not want kids to emulate that kind of behavior. Yes, she's blind, and she should be commended for overcoming her disability and being a badass earthbender in spite of it and blah, blah, blah. But her personality is just horrible.
Here's the thing, though. She has a softer side. You know what I mean? Like, she is this person that, you know, yeah, she's abrasive, but she's also a rich girl whose parents refuse to allow her to fulfill her dreams. She's this character that, I mean, she's the only one that has any kind of personal sacrifice in that storyline. Like, it costs something to be her. The reason that she's so mean is because she's used to people treating her poorly. She's not used to people who are actually her friends. And she's actually the first person to accept Prince Zuko into the group. She accepts him because she realizes that, you know what, like, I'm not a peach. Like, I'm not this easy to deal with person. You know, maybe he deserves a chance. And he ends up, you know, assisting everybody with saving, you know, the entire kingdom.
You can't give her credit for accepting Zuko when she's a walking lie detector who can hear your heartbeat. I mean, that kind of makes it a little easier to accept people. Like, that's not a character trait. That's a function of her powers, which, by the way, are my biggest issue with her. She's so overpowered. Like, I love the idea that you have this person who has a disability and she's so comfortable with it, and it is what it is. But at the same time, do they all have to be Daredevil? Like, can we not show someone with a handicap that like actually shows how awesome she is because of other things? Like, all the other characters in that series, and I love TUFF, I love her personality, I think she's great, but all the other characters in that series act like children and age as children. She's overpowered since day one and continues to be that. And she overcomes things that quickly in a way that's almost frustrating because she doesn't feel like a child the way the rest of them do. And it's also very hard for me to think about her and not feel a little bit tarnished by what happens later in Legend of Korra, where they made her out to be this horrible mother who basically abandoned her kids to like fight with each other all the time. So it's very hard to like not like forget that this kid who is kind of cute in her abrasiveness at that age ends up being really bad later on, and that kind of to me tarnished her character in a way. And with regards to Elmo, I think your answer might have been right like 10 years ago. Right now, all I can think of is really annoying Tickle Me Elmo dolls that drive me insane. And as a parent, I don't like the fact that he speaks in third person. It drives me insane. It's what Trump does. It's what Jar Jar Binks does. Horrible people speak in third person. And it just, why would you want to even teach that to kids? I think they give him way too much screen time. I'd rather see Oscar the Grouch, who's hilarious. I'd rather see the Cookie Monster, who, by the way, should not be eating veggies. I'd rather see the Count. Like, there's so many other characters that keep getting shortcut because you want to put more Elmo because he sells dolls that are terrifying.
No, they put more Elmo because Elmo is the kid monster. He's 3.5 years old in canon of the show. He's the one that the kids can actually connect with on that level and emulate as a role model. He's the one who befriends Julia, the new autistic monster. He's the one who gets her and relates to her and becomes her friend and shows people how you can be friends with young kids with autism, you know, and deal with their hurdles. Big Bird's the one who fumbles through and goes for the high five and gets shut down and is like, what? She doesn't like me? He doesn't get it. But Elmo does. Elmo is able to relate to her and bring her into the fold.
It's not just Elmo. There's two other characters there. The girl one, which name I always forget, is also helping with that transition. So you can't give him credit for that whole scene being his hand. And I think Big Bird fumbling through that scene is actually positive because that's kind of what a lot of us do as kids. When you meet someone with a disability, you don't really know how to interact with it, and it's a learning process. And I think the show did great for that, but you can't give Elmo all the credit.
No,
I
but
also-
their dynamic between Big Bird's reaction and response and Elmo's reaction and response play off each other to make the scene stronger. They use two of their strongest characters to facilitate that scene and help bring her into the fold of Sesame Street. You wouldn't just
Again,
randomly
it's not
throw
just
her at
him. There
Oscar
is
the
that girl
Grouch.
character. If somebody could give me the name,
I absolutely agree with you, Adry. I think that Big Bird is the character that kids I think can connect a little bit more with. Like to me, Elmo is kind of a baby. You know what I mean? Like he's not like a toddler or like a 4 or 5 year old. Like he's like a true kind of baby. And like maybe he represents like, you know, the childlike wonder of a kid. But I think that as far as like a character that kids can actually connect to, it's definitely Big Bird, especially with his relationship with Snuffleupagus. Like there's so much understanding and care that goes into that character. And, you know, not to be that person, but, you know, Elmo actually has a scandal based around him. The person who
Elmo
the person who voiced Elmo is Kevin Clash.
The voice actor
Kevin Clash
had a scandal. The character
now,
does not have a scandal.
Carol Spinney, who voiced Big Bird for decades on Sesame Street, he's never had any kind of scandal, and that character has remained pure, you know, forever. But you know, if you watch even the Elmo, you know, documentary about Kevin Clash, it's not as clean as you would hope to see for Sesame Street. It just isn't.
So, Candace, I'm going to start with you. Well, hang on one second. Candace, I'm going to start with you. I want to give final thoughts. Why is the addition of TUFF in your show better than the addition of the other? Like, what does TUFF bring to your show over the other two?
Okay, so TUFF not only brings a contrast with female characters so that you don't just have this like one girl that's like really wide-eyed and curious and happy-go-lucky all the time. She brings a balance to the group in general, because you have, you know, Sokka, who's kind of sarcastic, Katara, who's optimistic but kind of like a mom type, and then Aang, who's like obviously the little kid. She also introduces metal bending, which is a brand new kind of bending that completely enhances the show and is a turning point in The Legend of Korra, which is a follow-up. She's also the only character to be involved in a spin-off from her respective show and to have her own, you know, in her own piece in another show. And I also think that just in general, you know, TUFF is essential. You know, Aang couldn't have gotten to the end of the story. He wouldn't have been able to learn, you know, earthbending, and they wouldn't have been able to win against the Fire Lord if TUFF hadn't been a part of their crew. Like she's essential.
Audrey, same question.
I think Parks and Rec started with a really rough start. The first season is totally awkward, stiff, annoying, almost unlikable. And I think the arrival of Chris Traeger marked that shift. It meant recognizing its strengths. It meant saying we're not going to be jaded like The Office. We're going to be boundless optimism. And I think the way his character symbolized that change and effectively made that change by bringing in these new plot elements was masterful. I think he's literally one of the most quotable characters in that whole movie, in that whole series. I say literally all the time thanks to him, and it's awesome. And I also think that again, the way that I don't think this is a character that just anybody could have done. I think the way to blend all these elements into someone and still make them be likable takes tremendous acting props. And why I would consider him over Ben, I think Ben, when he starts out that season 2, when he's just a guest character, he's still very jaded. It takes a while for him to develop into the character you love afterwards, when he's like has this great relationship with Leslie. And I think that transition period makes it so that Chris Traeger is still a better character because he's on point since day one.
Okay, and Kim.
Okay, Elmo came into the show in the middle of the 80s and just skyrocketed as a character. He's, you know, you mentioned the Tickle Me Elmo's driving you crazy, but he resonated with kids to the point that parents were fist fighting in the store to try to give that toy to their kids in 1995, 96. That was what they were trying to, you know, the parents were trying to make those kids happy and give them the character that they resonated with the most. They weren't going crazy for a Big Bird toy. They weren't going crazy for Oscar the Grouch. They were going crazy for Elmo. And, you know, Chris Traeger, he's literally the most annoying character to ever be. That catchphrase is horrible.
I love it.
Somehow stuck, and it drives me insane. And he uses Ben as a scapegoat. It's always, oh, hey, can we give them this concert that they want? And Ben turns to Ben, and Ben has to be the one who says no. He makes Ben be the bad guy so he can just continue being his upbeat, optimistic self. He's manipulative in that way. He exploits Ben's fiscal responsibility so he can be the good guy. And underneath all that, he's just a jerk. You know, my heart beats at 23 beats per minute. I can pump jet fuel into a plane. Like, what? Nobody is actually like that. It's just incredibly annoying and frustrating.
All right, well fought,
Why
guys.
is that the final argument?
No, I said finally you could throw something out there, but we have time. We're trying not to make a 1,000-hour episode. Is basically what it is. Okay, Tom, give me some facts.
I think the biggest point that was argued was whether or not Chris Traeger dealt with his depression throughout the entire season of season 4.
Yes, do we have a fact on that?
He falls out with Jerry's daughter right after the Halloween party, which I think is like maybe 3 or 4 into the season.
Mm-hmm.
And then he does come to terms with Leslie because Leslie convinces him he's a great guy, but he still has issues and he's going through therapy until the end of the season. So it's kind of up in the air whether or not he's better, but he still has a problem and he acknowledges it.
Gotcha.
As far as other things on Twitter, a lot of people didn't like the role model argument for TUFF. Joe even said TUFF may be a role model for kids going through similar to have more of a shell. But as far as people's recommendations, Morgan said Frank Reynolds from Always and Sunny, DL and Supernatural. David said Woody Bird from Cheers.
Oh yeah, Woody.
And there is a bunch. Oh, and Eric Lois Lane from Smallville. And Paul Spike from Buffy. I had to get in there.
Nice.
Oh, I thought about that one. So
Yeah,
good.
Spike was on my list down in the middle.
Did Eric Assenmacher have one? By any chance, did you catch it?
He loved the TUFF.
I think that was a great pick. I think all of these are really good picks. When I saw the ones you guys picked, I was really excited for this round, and I think it worked out great. So I will do some personal fact checking. Just so you all know, I have 2 children, and I could tell you without a doubt that Elmo is bigger than Big Bird has ever been. I loved Big Bird as a kid because Big Bird was all I had, but then I aged out of Sesame Street. But when I came back for my kids, Elmo is bigger than he deserves to be, but he is bigger than Big Bird. That being said, looking at the points, I saw a lot of hits on Parks and Rec. And I think they really came after Rob Lowe's character, but I think you argued it well. It's just a contrast when you say boundless optimism, and then I think, as the facts have shown, that he spent almost an entire season very unoptimistic. So it was hard to reconcile that argument for me. So it did fall again between Toph and Elmo. Wow, this is a crazy fight. I think Kim was correct that Toph is not a role model. However, she had a huge impact on that show and a very important impact on The Last Airbender, which we all know I like the movie. For some reason, people like to make fun of me for that. I didn't think the movie was as bad.
And you never got to see her.
Yeah, Even though Elmo, we're a lot of criticism came to Elmo, but Elmo is 3.5 years old, and his job is to appeal to kids, not necessarily to us. I think the argument was better from Candace as to why Toph was important to her series and a better addition to her series. And I didn't really get that from Elmo, so for me, Candace gets the point. Well done.
That's fair. That's Toph.
And Toph is awesome.
I mean,
So awesome.
She's amazing.
So awesome. And going into this round, I didn't know who would win because I was like, these are 3 really freaking good picks. But really well done. What did the internet have to say, Tom?
My cabbages. No, the internet said at 45% for TUFF, 36% for Chris Traeger, who, by the way, I can't think of without saying boob hats in my head, and 19% for Elmo.
That was a great round. I'm so glad we did that one. Let's do a follow-up, guys. Follow-up speed round, same as before. It's an easy one, I think. Which show should have been canceled after its first season but wasn't? This is a toughie. This could almost be its own question, and someday probably will.
Friends.
Friends. I heard Friends from Kim.
Yeah, you did.
All right.
Hemlock Grove.
Hemlock Grove. That was also a very good pick. That's the Netflix show, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
The Tudors.
The Tudors. My wife would disagree with you.
I know a lot of people are going to disagree with me.
Because apparently there's a hot guy in it or something. I don't know. Okay. So we got Friends versus Hemlock Grove versus the Tudors. Kim, we heard you first, so you can begin. It's again 30 seconds whenever you're ready.
So my issue with Friends is that the seasons are just repetitive. The reason why it's common to see it on, doctor's office TVs is because no matter what episode they air, in whatever order, it doesn't matter. You can just zone out and be like, oh, look, it's Friends. They go through the same plot lines over and over again. Ross and Rachel on and off and on and off and on and off, and his wife and ex-wife and re-wife and ex-wife again, and like it never actually goes anywhere. It just goes in circles. So one season gives you that circle, and then you just call it a day.
Hemlock Grove.
Okay, so the first season of Hemlock Grove was arguably kind of excellent. I feel like the pacing was really interesting. The characters and like storylines that they built up were really, really cool. But I feel like they didn't expect to have additional seasons of it. And the second two seasons were just very poorly planned, very poorly paced. A lot of the writing was just awful. The acting was terrible. I mean, Famke Janssen makes almost everything look good, including Jean Grey, and even that couldn't be saved by her, which I think is saying a lot. And I just in general just feel like that show was just a disappointment.
Okay, and Adry, the Tudors.
The Tudors, unfortunately, trying to cover a period in history, overstayed its welcome. It's a series that the main actor who plays Henry VIII somehow forgets how to act Henry VIII halfway through the series and just becomes like a parody of himself. As they try aging his character, he just becomes progressively more ridiculous and just starts repeating the same lines over and over. His madness in the later seasons is absolutely laughable. They should have just capped it after one season while it was still in its prime before he sort of like degraded until it became a joke of himself.
Okay, rebuttal from Kim.
Well, I gotta. Friends is a sitcom. You'd like to think that they had enough source material in a bunch of people in New York City living their lives to give you solid material season after season, and instead they just rehash and rehash and rehash. Hemlock Grove, they tried, and maybe they went off in the wrong direction, but there was room to make an effort.
Candace, rebuttal.
So one of the best comedies, I think, contemporary comedies in the last decade was How I Met Your Mother, and that wouldn't have existed without Friends. I think that Friends was not necessarily the best show, but at the same time held huge cultural impact for lots of people, even those who didn't really watch it. The Tudors was Emmy nominated. It launched the careers of Natalie Dormer and Henry Cavill, who went on to do great things.
Time. Okay, and the Tudors. Or rebuttal, sorry.
Yeah.
Butter.
Just give me a second.
Mm-hmm.
I think Friends, despite the fact that they do revisit certain plot lines, you see the characters grow within each other's plot lines, and you see their relationships mature with those plot lines. So I don't think it repeats itself quite as much as you're making it out to be. I think the Tudors, on the other hand, when you look at it, the plot just became extremely repetitive because that is the nature of that history. But the moral questions at stake were really only present in the first season. They should have discarded that.
Time.
Well,
this is going to be a tough one. Tom, what did you feel about this one? Don't forget you're muted. There you go.
Yeah, there we go. So to be fair, I hate Friends, but at the same time, I was looking at this by like taking just the first season and then like how would it be as a show for just one season.
Right.
I remember, and I've seen all of them, but I remember by the end of Hemlock Grove, the way they would have been, it was like a book ending. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
So it could have just finished and been fine. I don't know what these other shows would have had to say either historically or otherwise.
So who do you pick? Hemlock?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, did you say yes?
Hemlock.
Okay, yeah, okay. All right. So, Kim, for me, the thing I heard the most was that it's the same plot over and over again, but I didn't really hear a lot more than that on Friends. And I think Candace really pointed out, How I Met Your Mother doesn't exist without Friends. I hate Friends too, by the way. Just throwing that out there. It's well documented. I'm not a fan of that show.
Yeah, I'm sure Roxy hates us now.
I got blacklisted by Roxy for a little while. Blacklisted. She was very upset with me because I voiced publicly my dislike for Friends. But anyway, so it is between Candace and Adry for me. And I think I like how, and Tom reiterated this, with Hemlock Grove, you had a story from beginning to end in that first season, and that was it. Candace also had good hits against both of the other shows. I'm going to give Candace the point. Well done. So did we take a poll for that one, Tom, at all? I'm curious what the audience thought. As Tom looks it up, I will let everyone know that, because I forgot to bring this up. Because this was the second lightning round, the winner of this lightning round, in this case Candace, gets to choose the order that we go for in the third round. So you get to choose the order in the mystery fight. Right now we are tied with Candace has 2 points, Kim has 2 points, Adry's trying to get her first, but this is a 2-point question, which means, Adry, you get this point, you're right back in it. You're tied with everyone, and we go to the tiebreaker question. What did the internet have to say?
Tied up Friends and Hemlock Grove, both at 45%, leaving Tudors at a 10%. So it is neck and neck.
My wife
loves... Tudors should be kept after the second season, not the first one.
Yeah, but my wife loves Henry Cavill and thinks that he's great in whatever he does, especially when his shirt is off. So
then that is a great series for her.
So for her, she loves it. Okay, guys, so we're going to go into the mystery round here. Before I ask the question, Candace, have you chosen a marching order for the final round?
I would like to go third. I would like Adry to go first and Kim to go second.
Okay. And Kim to go second. Fantastic. Guys, this is the mystery round. So all the fighters have picked an answer, but they don't know what the other people have picked. So they've only been able to prepare for their own choices. And as always in the mystery fight, you cannot duplicate someone else's answer. So if someone says Happy Gilmore, no one else can say Happy Gilmore. If someone says Happy Gilmore for this round, I will be confused. So here we go. By the end of 2017, there will be a whopping 12 more book movies released in the theaters. 12. Let that sink in. 12 of the movies you're going to see this year are comic book movies. So I wanted to know, and this is sort of a rehash of questions that we've alluded to before, but we want to know, what is the best movie ever made based on a comic book? So just so you know, it doesn't have to be a specific comic book series that talks about a specific story. As long as the Flash is a character in a comic book, you can have a movie based on the Flash and it counts for this question. So we are going to start with Adry. What did you pick?
I picked what I think is not just the best ever comic book movie, but one of, top 50 movies, at least in my life, that I've ever seen, The Dark Knight. It picked and chose from quite a lot of source material. Batman Long Halloween, The Killing Joke, the early 1940s vision of the Joker. I mean, it really picked and chose from a very wide array of a background story, but created what I think is the strongest representation of this character in film, period.
Okay. Kim, you got to go second here. What did you pick?
For this round, I went with The Dark Knight Returns. That's an animated adaptation. It's not The Dark Knight Rises that came after Adry's pick. And we'll be fighting that momentarily.
All right. Returns. And then you get to hit the end here, Candace. What'd you pick?
I picked Scott Pilgrim versus the World by Edgar Wright. I think that it is a really imaginative film, and for me, it remains really true to the source material, which, because it's such a difficult comic and it's also a series, I feel like that was a really extraordinary triumph for Edgar Wright and crew.
All right, guys, get in there.
Okay, so the problem with The Dark Knight is that it's exclusively buoyed by Heath Ledger's performance. That movie, as both a superhero movie and as a Batman movie, is extremely lukewarm. It carries very little weight. The Heath Ledger elevates that movie, and everyone's so obsessed with his performance, and it was a good performance, but the movie as a whole, it's just weak tea. It doesn't carry anything behind it. The Dark Knight Returns is the Batman vs Superman that we should have had from Snyder. It took the books that he sourced from and gave them a much more faithful adaptation. It was, you know, brutal. It was to its core, and there was absolutely no Martha to have to contend with. Scott Pilgrim versus the World is just sort of a mock attempt at delivering a comic book movie. It comes from a comic book, quasi-graphic novel, quasi-manga kind of feel to it, riffing on video games and things. It's a little all over the place. And while there's some, you know, references and nods and elbows for nerds, the movie just kind of falls short.
The movie is frame for frame, almost shot for shot, exactly what's in the comic book. So there are very few fans out there, I think, who can really criticize it and say that even if you disagree with the casting, which I know is something that some people have had a problem with, saying that that's not how they saw the characters in their mind, which, like, you definitely run that risk with any kind of comic book movie or something based on a book. I think that Scott Pilgrim, it really respects its fans. It's very intelligently written. The cinematography by Bill Pope is next level. To have somebody, you know, an artist of that caliber willing to work on, you know, a movie that isn't some kind of big name blockbuster hit. You know, both of you guys picked Batman, and Batman, like, I mean, Batman sells himself. You could have, like, you know, a piece of crap on the ground with, like, a little Batman logo in it, and someone will probably stop and take a picture of it because, like, why not? It's Batman. Like, that's super awesome. But it's much more difficult to sell something that, you know, I mean, Oni Press is the publisher of Scott Pilgrim, so this isn't some, you know, like, even top 3, you know, contender of you know, publishers for comic books. It's very much a dark horse kind of film. No pun intended with the publisher. But it's very much this movie that, you know, that speaks to its fans. Like, it's not too pretentious. It makes fun of itself. It's flexible. Like, The Dark Knight isn't very flexible. Like, The Dark Knight, Christopher Nolan, you know, he did a great job, but he set out to make some really serious comic book movies, and then sometimes doesn't even, like, keep up with his own, like, folklore. Like, sometimes, you know, like, the rules are a little bit bent, and something that is, you know, not something that would happen in real life happens, even though he's trying to, like, push this agenda of making this, like, really realistic, you know, action film that's, like, true to real life. Like, Scott Pilgrim, you know, presents you with this magical realism, which I think is something that, you know, we unfortunately don't see a lot in American cinema. And it uses CGI in an extremely clever way. It's not designed to make things look more real, like in, you know, The Dark Knight. It's more an enhancement, you know what I mean, to the surrounding areas, so that you can, like, better get in touch with the characters' emotions. Especially, like, when the scene, you know, in the scene when Ramona and Scott finally kiss and all the hearts are going everywhere, and you see him, like, in the background, like this rock and roll Jesus, like, he feels like he's on cloud 9. Like, it's something that you can it really touches your heart, and it really makes you feel human when you're watching it. Whereas these other movies, like, yeah, they're entertaining, and, like, Batman is super awesome. He's one of my favorite you know, franchises, but, you know, you kind of get more of the same with Batman, you know, same stuff, different story. But Scott Pilgrim is, like, a whole new telling of, you know, something that we've all kind of gone through.
The problem, though, is that
Kim, give me one second. I do want to hear from Adry for a second because she hasn't had a chance.
So responding real quick to Kim's points regarding, I'm a little bit flabbergasted that you would say that this movie has no depth. Number one, as far as acting, it's not just Heath Ledger. There's Gary Oldman does an amazing job, Michael Caine does an amazing job, Aaron Eckhart did I mean, there's across the board solid performances. I don't think a single one of them was weak. So I don't think, yes, he did get the nomination. Not only did he got the award posthumously for his acting performance, but I think across the board, it is a beautifully acted movie. And I do think it has weight. I think it deals with some really, really dark and complex issues. I love that it's a comic book movie that doesn't dumb itself down to the lowest common denominator. It talks about morals, it talks about limits, it talks about the rule of law, what is the use of force and when it should be used. I mean, these are complicated issues, and I think it does a really, really well in what is a comic book genre. But I think it transcends the genre by bringing those issues in and making it palatable for a very wide audience, which is my biggest concern against Scott Pilgrim. I think it's a great movie about nerds for nerds. I had a great time in it. I know so many people who saw it who did not relate to it, who did not understand it, who it did not resonate with them because it's very niche for that culture. So it worked for me. It does not work with a general audience. So I don't know if you could call it the best movie as a whole because for a lot of people, it's just polarizing. It doesn't make a lot of sense.
Well, here's the thing, though. With that argument, you have movies like Dancer in the Dark. You have movies like Punch Drunk Love. You have these movies, you know, like Schindler's List. Those aren't movies that are fun. Those aren't movies that resonate with everybody. Those are movies that are about real human pain, that are about real human suffering, that are about real human experiences. And I think that's why Scott Pilgrim is so transcendent above the other two films. Like, you know, you don't have this person who is, you know, infallible. You don't have this person who, you know, has very few flaws. Like Batman has very few flaws. Like, yes, he's a flawed character, but he has very few flaws. Like Scott Pilgrim is a regular guy. You know, you have this kind of like this you know, presence of, you know, of like the past coming back to like haunt you. And yes, Batman also has that, but with Scott Pilgrim, he's actually actively fighting someone's past. Like he is actually fighting that. Like all Batman has are memories. Like he can't fight the past the way that Scott Pilgrim is. You know, when Scott Pilgrim, you know, redeems himself at the end of the movie and he levels up 2 times and gets 2 different swords to fight with, like that's like a really interesting and unique way of, you know, communicating his triumph as a human being, and the fact that like he's no longer this asshole.
Also, his triumph as a human being is effectively cheating on his girlfriend. But that's, you know.
No, it's not cheating on his girlfriend. It's being this young man who is, you know, afraid and who is selfish and who like doesn't understand you know, the world around him, which arguably you could say is also like Bruce Wayne. But unlike Bruce Wayne, who takes 3 movies to learn from his mistakes, where he finally like backs out and is like, you know what, man, like I'm in over my head with this Batman thing. Like I've done my time. You know, I've tried to help things. I've also hindered things. Unlike Batman, you know, Scott gets to the end of the movie and he's like, you know what, like I've been living like a punk ass. Like I've been living like a dumb, like a dumb, you know, jerk who like doesn't care about anybody but, you know, myself. Like my relationship with Envy is over. There's no excuse for my behavior. And he apologizes to both of those girls face to face. You know, he sits down with them and is like, listen, like this is what I did. He owns up. He mans up, so to speak, and, you know, takes responsibility for his actions. I think that, you know, you see a whole transition of a character throughout the movie of Scott Pilgrim. You don't see a lot of growth with Batman. Like you see growth with the Joker and like, you know, Heath Ledger, commendable performance, like absolutely phenomenal. And I love that film. But I just don't think that it's the best. Like I think that standalone, you know, without having to see any other source material before or after it, even the cinematography, shot for shot, the, you know, the way that they you know, like parcel out the screen so that it looks like a comic book. Like I think that it really is the best, like pure comic book movie.
I disagree. Even on style, I think Scott Pilgrim, it's very off-putting for some people. If you're not into that gamer genre, if you're not into that culture, it really doesn't even make sense at times. And I don't think the resolution is as optimistic as you're making it out to be. I mean, a guy at the end figuring out maybe I should apologize for being a jerk does not mean he's achieved redemption. I definitely think you're giving it a much lighter tone than what it actually is.
I didn't say redemption. I said growth.
Let me get a chance here, guys, if I may. I don't think I've heard enough about Dark Knight Returns. I need a better sense of that film. So can you give me a moment to explain why yours is the best?
So, like I said at the top, this is the Batman vs Superman that we should have gotten. The premise here is that Batman had retired, forced into retirement, not by choice. Eventually, crime in Gotham gets to the point where he can't take it anymore, and he pulls himself out of retirement under threat from Superman not to. And then, you know, he comes back into Gotham. He brings order back to the chaos. But then Superman has to come down and lay the law and say, no, you have to go back into retirement. Batman refuses. They set, okay, we're going to have to duke this out. From that point, Batman has a plan laid out. He executes that plan flawlessly. At the end of it, he's got Superman on the ropes, exactly where he wants him. His intention, though, is not to kill Superman. It was never to kill Superman. It was to break Superman psychologically. He puts Superman right on the edge and says, if I wanted to, you'd be dead. You know, it's to haunt his dreams. It leaves a mark on Superman that when he's lying alone at night in the Fortress of Solitude and he wakes up in a cold sweat, it's from nightmares of the time that Batman, a regular human being, beat him. And it just,
here's the
like,
thing,
that's
though.
the point.
That movie, it's based off Frank Miller's Dark Knight Return, excuse me. And that comic book, I think it's, that graphic novel, excuse me. I don't think there's anything that the animated version adds to the original. I think the original was strong, if not stronger than the animated version. So in a way, I think it kind of disappoints a bit. I mean, I saw it and I can't remember any like voice actor that I was like, wow, what an amazing job. It was just it. I'm glad to see this version on screen, but it doesn't add anything. It didn't really. I get what you're saying, that I would have preferred Batman v Superman to be that, but at the same time, I just don't think it holds up to some of the other movies we're discussing, because it really doesn't add anything to the source material. I'd rather just read the original version.
But the point
feel like
DC
that
Animated isn't to add to it. It's to deliver the material through another medium, and DC Animated always delivers that. And if you're going to make a point about not adding anything, Candace raised the point that her movie is basically a frame-for-frame, shot-for-shot recreation of the book. So if anything doesn't add to its source material, it's going to be Scott Pilgrim.
That's the thing, though. It does add to the source material, because instead of having this, plain flat page, you're actually seeing this come to life, which I think is really magical. Being able to see something kind of just like spring right off of the page and right in front of your face, especially with, like I said, the use of CGI and like all of the other, special effects that they use to try and like move the story along. Like, I really feel like it's, scintillating to watch. You can't look away from the screen. It's electrifying. It's a very cool movie. You feel cool watching it. I recognize, what Adry is arguing, that it's not for everybody, but like I said, just because something isn't for everybody doesn't mean that it can't, that isn't a good movie. That just means it isn't a summer blockbuster that has mass appeal. I think that The Dark Knight Returns, like, it was an excellent film, like, definitely, but I feel like the first half of that movie, like the first half of it is like so taut and like, on point, and it's fast and it's snappy and it's like action packed. And then like it kind of like dwindles off for me. Like it gets a little slow. It gets a little predictable. Like it starts feeling a little sluggish. Like it doesn't feel as like different and as unique as like perhaps you would want, a Batman movie to feel. Like, I mean, even comparing it to like another DCU movie, animated movie, The Return of the Joker, like that movie is dynamic from start to finish. Like you're getting big reveals like every couple of minutes, like things that you didn't necessarily know before, parts of the story that are brand new. And like I get it, like that's a standalone story, but like still, like it's borrowing from the Batman mythology to give you a connection to a prior plot line. So I feel like there's just a lot more that could have been done in that movie, and they could have kept the pace up consistently rather than having kind of bursts of excitement.
I disagree. I think it's a good balance. I think we'd be kind of killing ourselves in a movie that long if we were the entire time just action-packed sequence. Instead, they build tension, and they give you these little glimpses of what the Joker's doing with the Mafia, what they're doing over here, and that actually helps build tension in a movie that essentially just like crime thriller kind of movie. So I think it works really well in its favor.
I was saying that about The Dark Knight Returns, actually.
Oh, sorry. I was like, what?
That one,
never mind.
Yeah, that I do feel like is an action-packed throw ride, absolutely.
Okay, I'm like, what?
I'm more mean the Dark Knight Returns. Sorry.
So here's what I want to do, guys. We're running out of time, so I want to get final thoughts. Audrey, I'm going to start with you. I want to know why we're talking best ever here. So I need to know why your comic book movie is not only better than these guys, it's the best ever.
Okay. Compared to these two, this is the best rated movie, both by audiences and by Rotten Tomatoes. It has the most nominations. This is the only one to get a major acting, the only comic book movie to win an Oscar for a major acting category. It is phenomenally acted across the board. I think it transcends the genre by bringing these deeper themes in as to the role of violence, the role of morals, what are your limits, what would you do in that situation? So I think even audiences that don't necessarily veer towards comic book movies would appreciate this movie for those topics and for what that brings. And I think its success across the board is evidence to how well it did with the general audience. I think the other two, not only are they much niches, I also think one does not add to the source material, and the other one, again, cannot be the best comic book movie, given that it simply does not. Hello? I can't hear you.
No, it's my fault. I'm not talking to you. My little one is here. No, I'm listening.
No, I thought for a second I disconnected.
No, you're good.
So yeah, I just think it has amazing action and amazing directorial work, very quotable movie. So I think across the board it is the best movie ever, and it especially compared to these two.
Awesome. All right, Kim, same question.
Yeah, the DC, while The Dark Knight's not part of it strictly, the DC live action DCEU is consistently a letdown compared to what DC animated delivers time and time again. When Batman vs Superman came out, fans were crushed. They were disappointed in what they were given. They turned to DC animated and said, why didn't you give us this? Why didn't you give us The Dark Knight Returns? This was what we would have wanted to see. This movie delivers what fans really wanted out of that plot line in a way that they were actually able to get their hands on it and not just get what Snyder handed them. It really is a crucial plot line in the combination of Batman and Superman's mythos. And that confrontation is iconic. It's on par with the death of the Joker in Return of the Joker in terms of how much significance it has on how those characters are reviewed by fans and viewed by fans time and time again.
All right. And Candace, same question.
I think that Scott Pilgrim is a standout film, not just because of the direction and the writing. It also is the only one of these films that features a cameo by its creator. The Marvel Universe obviously is very well skilled at inserting Stan Lee into films. Brian Lee O'Malley is in the bar scene in Scott Pilgrim, the center of the film with his wife Hope Larson. I think that it's a movie that, even if you are not into comic books, like if you're into video games, if you're into pop culture, if you're into television sitcoms, if you're into awesome movies, like it doesn't matter what kind of fandom you're into, you can find something for yourself in Scott Pilgrim. It's not just a movie for comic book fans, it's a movie for fans. And I think that Batman is something, especially having people like Heath Ledger attached to it, or Maggie Gyllenhaal attached to it, or obviously Christian Bale. You're trying to reach for a much larger audience. It's kind of a catch-all, which I think is why the DC Universe movies tend to be a little weak sauce. They're trying to please everybody. I think Scott Pilgrim was a little bit more concerned with telling the story and telling it the best way that they could, and I believe that they were successful.
Fantastic. This is going to be a tough one, guys. Tom, help me out here. Talk about some of the facts that we missed or did not miss.
Factually, everything was pretty much on board. I was going to clear up the post. I can't say that word, but the after death already corrected herself, so I didn't have to. As far as that, everything was pretty much opinion based, so I can't really fact check a lot of that.
It is Frank Miller, right? I'm like 99% sure, but I'm not.
Yes, that is.
Okay,
that's,
thank you.
Yeah.
Yep.
I checked that too.
It's been a while.
Did Twitter have any thoughts?
A bunch of thoughts. We got Langley saying V for Vendetta was among one of his choices. Morgan preferred Batman Begins. He said Spider-Man 2, which I agree with also.
That was
Who said,
David?
Oh, Spider-Man 2. I was thinking Amazing Spider-Man for a moment. I was
No,
like,
no,
wait a minute,
no.
what? Who picked
Raimi's.
that? Okay. Yeah,
Raimi's.
Raimi's.
And Cop, and shout out for Under the Red Hood, which is my favorite Batman animation, besides Mask of the Phantasm.
Nice. Guys, this is really tough. All right. So listening to all the arguments, Kim, I think the thing that hurts you the most is that I don't think enough people have seen your movie. And I think that that's a detriment to yours, even though it's really, really good. And if you guys haven't seen The Dark Knight Returns, you should definitely see it, because it is the Batman v Superman that everyone wants. I just feel like I didn't get enough about why audiences responded to it the most. So for me, it did come down between Adry and Candace. I, for one, love Scott Pilgrim versus the World. I think it's a great movie. It is a shot-by-shot comparison to the comic book. I think they do a really good job with that. Candace brought that up as well. I like when the shots came over, Adry, you had some great answers. Oh, we only remember Heath Ledger. No, we also remember Oldman and Eckert, which was very true. I think you did hit Scott Pilgrim well when you said it's about nerds for nerds, because it is. And as much as I love that movie, I don't know that it's a movie. It's a movie for fans as much as it's a movie for nerds, because that movie did not do well in the box office, and I personally did not see it until after it. So I've only seen it on tape, but I love it when I saw it, but only because I'm a nerd. So I thought that was a really good hit. And then they both kind of got you with the did he really grow? He was cheating with his girlfriend the whole time. So, oh great, you admitted that you cheated on your girlfriend. The whole movie is you cheating on your girlfriend. So for me, I really liked Adry's arguments the best. So
Yes.
Adry gets the point.
I didn't flunk out.
Which we have a tie, a three-way tie, first time. Tom, I would love to know what the internet says, first of all. What did they pick?
Let me just pull up the poll real quick, and I will tell you. So sorry, I'm being flooded. The response online is really good. So
Oh, good. I like all these questions. I think you guys did a great job picking answers for all of these. It's been very difficult to pick a winner for each of these rounds. I'm like, oh man, I got to tell someone who did a really good job they didn't win this one. Come on, internet.
Quick shout out to some new faces in the chat. Jay Wu, our buddy Matt, the Bear Mongolia, is in there.
Welcome.
I promise there's a poll.
Well, while you're getting ready for the poll, let me tell everybody about our tiebreaker round. So before we do the fights, we ask everyone to pick a character, any character from any movie or television show ever. So real quick, let's go down the line here, and we're going to get what everyone picked. Kim, what character did you pick to represent you today?
I went with Felix the cat.
Awesome. Audrey, who did you pick?
I love your answers, Kim. That is awesome. Okay.
Her answers are fantastic.
I picked my favorite character from my favorite TV series, which is from MASH, Benjamin Hawkeye Pierce.
And Candace, who did you pick?
Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Now, we are going to clarify. You are choosing TV's Buffy, correct?
Correct.
Okay, good,
And
because no one in their right mind chooses.
And TV's Benjamin Pierce, assuming anybody knew that was.
Oh, well, that's
one of
true,
the favorites.
actually. Yes, I should have asked that. But yeah, okay. So we're talking TV, and Felix, which I guess is TV, too.
Yeah, it was
All right, so TV.
silent and then talkies when they
So-
became a thing.
Before I ask the question, Tom, did you find the poll?
The poll results are 47% said The Dark Knight, 40% said Scott Pilgrim, 13% with The Dark Knight Returns.
All right, so that's pretty much how I picked it. So I'm glad, even though most people don't. Most people pick right away and then hear the arguments after. But it worked out anyway. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. So I'm going to give you a scenario for your character. I'll give you a few moments to think about your answers. I'm going to give you about 2 minutes each to come up with your argument, and then about a minute to rebut and to say anything else you want to say about your pick. And then because it's a three-way tie, I'm going to pick two people to move forward, so one person will not move forward since they're all tied together. So you don't want to be number 3 in this one. So your question is, we are going to pitch your character starring in a standalone Star Wars movie. So your character is now in the Star Wars universe. They're getting their own film. You got to pitch it. So I'm going to give you a few moments to think about it. And while I do that, I want to take a moment to talk about another show on our channel, BFF, Because Fan Friction, that's hosted by Ashley and Joe Davis. If you've never seen the show, it's on the other Sundays that we aren't on. And basically, they take a movie that was mentioned in this week's episode and they review it because they've never seen it before. And they told me that next week, they will be doing Kim's pick for the previous round of The Dark Knight Returns, because they've never seen it. So you're definitely going to want to tune in next week to see what they thought of that movie. And then Tom, is tomorrow the next OSP?
We're not having a standalone episode because usually we'll do a theme or something, but we're doing our Q&A and going over like recent news and stuff. Like we'll be talking about the new Dark Tower trailer, bunch of new stuff in there. And Kimber's in Florida still. Hi, Kimber. Hi, Mama Duke. So Randall should be guest hosting with me.
Oh, that'll be fun.
Yeah, it should be a fun dynamic. So come by 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're just going to hang out and talk about some news and fun stuff.
That's awesome. Yeah, guys, check it out. By the way, if you would like to get on the Odd Shape panel, you can join their show in the chat and just say, hey, I want to be a guest, and Tom will get you in the queue, and you can join that show as well. It's not a set audience every time, so definitely get involved in the conversation. I've been on the show. It's a lot of fun, and you just answer the questions, have some fun, shoot the poop. It's good. So that's, again, tomorrow night, 9 p.m. live on their YouTube channel. You'll find information in the description below. But please check that out, guys. It's a really great show. Okay, so we're going to hit this up here. We're going to go back to the first order. So we're going to do Kim, Candace, and Audrey. Kim, you're going to go first. Are you ready with your pitch?
About as ready as I could ever hope to be.
Yes, because these are wonderful curveballs that you did not prepare for, which is why we love them. Okay, so Kim, whenever you're ready, let her rip.
Okay, so we're taking Felix the cat. He's a talking cat with a bag of tricks, and we're putting him in the Star Wars universe. This is a perfect fit. He can already blend in surprise, he's not an Earth cat that happens to talk. He's an alien from an alien planet in the galaxy that Star Wars exists in. Some people from his race come and retrieve him. You know, he's got a track record of traveling interdimensionally, fighting armies of robots, saving the day with his bag of tricks. So they come to him and they say, look, we've got a problem. The Empire's getting out of hand. We need you and your bag of tricks to come and bail us out because the Rebel Alliance, they're off doing their thing and it ain't getting us anywhere. Come save our planet with your bag of tricks. So they retrieve him from Earth. They take him back to the Star Wars galaxy. And here we go. Him, his bag of tricks, and the professor sidekick that always tags along have to mount a defense of his home world that he's only just discovered and is trying to, you know, oh man, there's all these other talking cats that I can relate to now. And what is this planet like? And who are these people? You know, trying to discover his roots and mount a defense against the Empire that's encroaching on their system. So, you know, the typical bag of tricks, he's turning it into objects, vehicles, things that he needs to get out of jams, and tries to formulate a way to keep them at bay while the Rebel Alliance is at the other end of the galaxy trying to pull them in that direction. So he's sort of mounting a defense and holding them at bay.
Awesome. I love it. Candace, give us a story for Buffy in the Star Wars universe.
Okay. I think in the Star Wars universe, you could actually see Buffy one of two ways. It's pretty easy to make that jump because obviously Star Wars is set in a galaxy far, far away. So it doesn't specify what dimension that might be in, whether it's supposed to be our reality or another reality. It kind of leaves it open to the imagination. And Buffy and her crew always, you know, they travel through different dimensions with, you know, hunting demons and all that stuff. So I think that Buffy could appear, you could do a movie with Buffy as a Jedi, which I think, you know, her powers already really lend themselves to being a Jedi. She uses her, you know, super strength and her superhuman capabilities almost as a force, like a guiding light to guide her toward, you know, doing the right thing and standing up against evil. Her powers obviously also make it easy for her to, you know, throw her weight around and gain respect in the Star Wars universe because, you know, you're dealing with lots of different kinds of, you know, creatures and aliens that that are, you know, both friendly and hostile. And I think that Buffy would be, you know, the best person to kind of discern that fine line. And I also think that that you could even have a version of Buffy where she's not a Jedi, where she's more of a bounty hunter, where she goes around and she, you know, takes down aliens, and she uses her Slayer strength to kind of make a name for herself as a Han Solo type figure as well. And then, like, my last point is Buffy's main weapon is the Slayer Scythe. And the Slayer Scythe has a very large blade at one end, and the other end has a stake. I think that it would be really easy to modify that weapon that she already carries by removing the stake and changing it out into a lightsaber.
Awesome. Cool. And Adry, let's get Benjamin Hawkeye Pierce in the Star Wars universe.
So actually, this to me is a very easy fit. For you that don't know, Hawkeye is a war doctor. He is a man who's drafted reluctantly into war in the Korean War in the series, but he brings a lot of humor to it, despite being in this really unfortunate situation. He tries to bring humor to it, and he's kind of like a ladies' man, and he's got this great thing going. And I think that would fit perfectly by bringing humor into the Star Wars universe, which it desperately needs. My plot line vaguely would be, so he is, you know, he's kind of a drinker. This is part of his plot. So he's probably in one of these cool taverns hanging out with all the cool aliens when some sort of battle breaks out between the rebels, and he ends up reluctantly being drafted as a war doctor for the rebels. You would be a different side, a more humanizing side to Star Wars. You would still see all the heroes. He's the ladies' man. You'd be interacting with all of them, but it would bring humor and stakes to the Star Wars story. I mean, when you see Episode 7, one of the things that most infuriated me is that, you know, opening scene, spoiler, they blow up like 5 different planets and nobody cares. Like, we're all just so unfazed by this. And I think seeing that other perspective behind the scene would make it so much more nuanced. It would really make you feel for these characters and really care and take it to a whole other level. So I think he's a perfect fit. He would bring heart and he would bring humor to the stories. So yeah, that's my pitch.
Awesome. Okay. So what I want to do is give each of you a few moments to think about the other person's answer and yours, and come up with a rebuttal. Kim, you're going to start whenever you're ready. So sell me on your pitch versus the other guys. Why is you're the best?
Okay, I at least pitched an original concept. You know, Candace opened up with Buffy's a Jedi. We're going to throw away the Slayer lineage and all of that canon, just make her yet another Jedi. We can't get away from, you know, oh, here's our super Jedi coming to save the day. And then she backpedaled from that and said, oh, no, wait, no, maybe I'll make her a bounty hunter instead. So we got 2 different movies pitched out of her. You know, the Slayer scythe, yeah, it's okay. You're going to modify it into a lightsaber. You're going to take the source of the Slayer lineage and can just convert it. Oh, that's no big deal. We'll just throw that away. It's just a weapon. There's just a lot of holes there. And then as far as Hawkeye goes, his medical knowledge is so far behind the Star Wars universe, despite being a long, long time ago. You know, he doesn't know about the tanks and the prosthetics that they have. He's going to be looking, well, we're going to have to amputate that. Oh, he's a lost cause. And they're going to look at him like, where are you from, the Stone Age? His medical expert, he's going to be so far behind, he's just going to have to go to med school before he can help the Rebel Alliance. They're going to send him to Rebel Medic med school for the first half of the movie.
All right. Thank you. Candace, go for it whenever you're ready.
Okay, so first of all, I gave 2 different options. I didn't backpedal. I think that giving 2 different options for a movie that my character could star in the Star Wars universe is actually really advantageous. I think that both of you guys have very narrow scenarios that your character could be adopted into the Star Wars canon. My character can come from a variety of different backgrounds and positions. I think that, you know, Felix the Cat, first of all, he's Stormtrooper colors. I think that that's going to be a little confusing if he's trying to be a good guy. Second of all, he's a talking cat. He's a cat that doesn't talk with a bag of tricks. Like, yes, he talks sometimes, but he was in a lot of silent films as well. So I don't know how that would exactly play out there either. Plus, he is a cartoon, and Star Wars, you know, there's no cartoons in Star Wars.
Yes, there are.
Ben Hawkeye Pierce. There are no cartoons in Star Wars. In the Star Wars films, there are no cartoons. Ben Hawkeye Pierce, I'm sure he's a great guy. He's a war doctor, which is excellent, and I'm sure that'll help him in the Star Wars universe. However, he was drafted reluctantly, which implies that he's not, you know, he doesn't have any field time. He's not experienced. He isn't cool under pressure. He isn't going to be this person that's going to be good in a pinch. And if you need to be anything in the Star Wars universe, it is consistently and constantly prepared. When you're not prepared in Star Wars, like, people die, you die, people get thrown, you know, aboard, you know, all kinds of things happen when you are not, you know, prepared in the Star Wars universe. And I think that, you know, especially the idea that he would be found in the cantina, like, you can't be a reluctant anything and be in the cantina. The cantina is for badasses and only badasses at all time. You know who would fit really well in the cantina, though, is Buffy the Vampire Slayer, because she kicks some serious ass and everybody knows it. Modifying her weapon is something that she can do to blend in, as well as keep up with the technology in the space and time that she's exploring. At the moment, it's not to, you know, throw away, you know, years of Slayer lineage, but bringing that up, the weapon does undergo modification, I believe, in the future. And, you know, the source of the power is what's inside of it, not, you know, the components that are attached to the scythe itself, especially because obviously the lightsaber would serve the same purpose as the scythe. It would just be a much more, you know, mechanized version of that.
Awesome. Audrey, you get the final word.
So I disagree with you. I think Hawkeye has proven himself. If you look at the MASH series on multiple occasions, he gets brought up straight to the front lines. He's under fire, and he consistently puts the life of his patients above his own. He's very, very much cool-headed under pressure because he knows that's his priority. When I say he was reluctantly drafted, is because, in fact, he is not a violent guy. He is a peaceful guy. That said, he will be there and he needs to save lives, and he will stand up to save lives. And I think he brings that heart that the series needs, and he brings that depth, and he brings those layers into making this more nuanced, because people die in Star Wars, and unless it's a main character, nobody seems to care. It's just one more Stormtrooper shot in the background. I have issues with Buffy. We already have a chosen one Jedi. We don't need another chosen one Jedi. And I think Buffy without her crew is kind of blah. It also, there's a question as to which Buffy. Is this the early Buffy who doesn't want her powers? Is this the depressed Buffy after she came back from the dead? Spoiler alert. Like, which version of Buffy? So I do think that is a problem. And with Felix the Cat, I just think tonally he does not work with Star Wars. I think he's kind of a laugh. He's kind of a gag. I don't think it really works. And I think at times when Star Wars goes that campy route, we end up with like Jar Jars. We don't really need, you know, weird animatronics. Like, I think it's a very fine line when they do those things. You get really, really good animatronics. You get Yoda. You get really, really bad animation. You get Jar Jar. I think borders on pushing towards that bad side, which I would not want to see in Star Wars.
All right. So, Tom, you're going to help me. We're going to pick a winner here. And unfortunately, we're also going to be picking a loser today that's not going to go forward to the final face-off. But first, I would like to know from Tom, what was your favorite pitch of the three?
The Hawkeye being there for the practical reasons I liked. Although I don't know how. I don't know how his wit would work within the scope of Star Wars, but still, I like that argument. Was the Felix argument, because it is just, I think, cartoon, and then I think of the very worst part of Star Wars, which is all of the bad CGI. I'd have to go with Candace. Plus, I think her pick with the sickle, if you're not aware with it, really cool weapon that does go into the 23rd century, as she said.
Was there a poll
retrofitted
also?
There was a poll. Yep.
All right, so I'll ask for that in a second. So if you can pull that up.
Okay.
I'm going to give you guys my pick. This is the winner of the round, in my opinion. When I listened to all the pitches, I was really looking for the idea of getting a good sense of what the movie was. And I actually found Kim's pick to be the one that gave me the most formed idea. A planet of cats. The Empire is a threat, and they have to defend their planet, which is very Star Wars. There are animated Star Wars movies. We didn't find out if this particular one was, but it could have been. Or excuse me, there's animated Star Wars in the Clone Wars and in Rebels. So for me, I think Kim gave us a fully formed idea that made perfect sense for me. So Kim is definitely moving forward. So well done, Kim. So I have to choose between Candace and Adry. Tom has put in a vote for Candace. What does the web say?
The web is at 86% Buffy, 14% Felix the Cat, and 0% Hawkeye.
Well,
I don't think anybody's ever seen MASH. There's 11 seasons, people.
I will say I hate MASH, but that has nothing to do with my pick. I'm just not a MASH fan. I actually really liked Adry's pick. I thought it was really interesting. I like the idea of a war doctor. No offense to Doctor Who. I like the idea of a war doctor. I thought that was really interesting. I think that had you given me a little bit more plot, as far as if you would give me more plot to like being in the front lines of a war and like they're fighting this war and he's the doctor there, I think I could have really felt the answer there. With Candace, I will agree that with Adry when she said, where are the Scoobies? You mentioned them at the very beginning, but you don't really put them in, and they're really a big part of who Buffy is.
You said that it was Solo, I focused on just that one character,
which is fine. I haven't taken points off, but you did like you mentioned at the beginning. But I was just like, I wish I had heard a little bit more about because they are an important part of who she is, and I think Adry also made a point that said, well, which Buffy are we getting because there's so many. I think when you started locking in though on the bounty hunter role, that made more sense to me. I just wish for you as well I had gotten more like storyline, like what's Buffy doing in this universe. So for both of you, like I felt that there was something missing from both of the pitches. However, to break the tie, I'm going to go with Tom and the internet. They really liked Candace, so I'm going to give Candace the point, and thus she will too be moving forward, which means Adry, even though you're not moving forward to the final face-off, you did a great job today. So everybody, please give her a round of applause.
Thank you.
Because you kick some major ass no matter what.
People should watch MASH. I know it's dated, but it's amazing. And it's one of those series that I really wish they would update because it's so relevant. But
I've just never been a fan.
Did you know the MASH finale is the single most watched television event in history that's not a Super Bowl? It's that big.
Wow. Yes, yeah, it was big actually for television too. That was a big show in late 70s, right? It finished, or did it actually make it into the 80s? I can't remember.
I think it ended in the 80s, but I don't.
Yeah, it just for some reason never resonated with me, but it is a show worth watching. So that means Kim and Candace, you are moving on to the final face-off. It is a best of 3. Scores are reset. It's basically like the lightning rounds, only faster. So you're only going to have 20 seconds and 10 seconds to get in your choices, and we're going to go for it right now. Question number 1. The TUFF channel, guys, that's this channel, will be heading to Philadelphia this June for Wizard World Comic-Con, where you may see some of these faces. Okay, one of them for sure. I'm pointing at Tom. I hope that's who he's. I hope that's who's on yours. But Tom will be there as well as some of the other members of the TUFF channel. So we're hoping we'll see you there as well. So I asked the question: what is the best movie set in Philly?
Signs.
Unbreakable.
Wow, no one says Rocky.
Almost did, and then I heard Signs.
No one says Rocky. And that's how you know that I'm actually from Philly. Because Rocky is pretty much our choice for just about everything.
I am too.
Are you?
Yeah.
Awesome. Where in Philly?
I'm from Holland. It's in Bucks County, so I'm like southeast of Philly a little bit.
I was born in Upper Darby.
Awesome.
So anyway, not to ruin the show for everybody. So Candace, we have Signs from you. Kim, we have Unbreakable. Candace, you're going to have 20 seconds, not 30. So it's going to go a little faster than you were last time. Whenever you're ready, you may begin. The best movie set in Philly.
Okay, so I believe that Signs is the best movie set in Philly because it features the countryside and the more rural aspect of it instead of the city, which is what you would normally expect. It launched the careers of several individuals. It helped with the rise of Joaquin Phoenix's career. It softened Mel Gibson at the right time when he really needed an extra win. And it gave us Abigail Breslin, obviously the star of Little Miss Sunshine.
Time. Okay, Kim.
Unbreakable is a defining movie in Shyamalan's career. It was before his descent into arguably madness that we got thereafter. It's in Philly. It's really in the city. You get the feel like you're in Philly. Plus, we now have the Unbreakable verse with what's coming next and what just came out. Spoiler alert for Split. So it's really a defining.
Okay, Candace. 10-second rebuttal. It's going to be fast.
I think that Signs has the best plot devices. Like, it's a movie that is actually scary and it doesn't use a lot of cheap tricks to get you there. Whereas Unbreakable, yeah, it's a nice story, but it's really plotting. It's really slow, and I think that the characters are underutilized.
Kim?
Plot devices, they're allergic to water. How's that for a plot device? Like, that Signs ends on such a horrible note that it cannot be considered a good movie set in Philly.
Time. All right, Adry, we're going to start with you. Who gave the better argument?
I'm struggling with a baby. I'm sorry.
I don't know. It's okay. Were you able to hear that round?
I got bits and pieces. I don't think it'd be fair for me to cast a vote. Sorry.
Gotcha. No, it's not a problem. I know exactly what you're going through. Tom, then we're going to go to you. Whose argument did you like the best? Don't forget you're muted. You're muted. I'm not hearing anything you're saying. Still muted.
I will say, starting, that Unbreakable is one of my favorite movies, but I don't think it was like I wish I saw some more of the landscape, like the stadium and stuff like that in the argument. And if I'm gonna fact check as far as the Signs thing, the daughter blessed all the water. It's holy water. That's why it does damage. But
so you're choosing Candace.
Yeah, I know. I feel a little one-sided today. I'm sorry, everybody.
Nope, that's okay. I'm just asking to confirm just to make sure I know where the vote is going. I think I would also give the vote to Candace on this one. I liked how she pointed out its impact on Joaquin Phoenix and Mel Gibson's career, especially. I thought that was a good nod. And I think that she took him down with 1 point, but it was a good rebuttal. And I think Kim had to spend her whole time basically arguing against that. But I think that Candace had the good argument there. So Candace, you get point number 1. Well done. So that means, Candace, you need 1 more point to win the game. Kim, you're going to need both of these, this next one especially, to stay alive. Question number 2. Let's do this one. Who is Hollywood's best woman?
Oprah Winfrey.
Kim?
I've gone completely blank on an entire gender of Hollywood.
Pick anyone.
Um,
I'm going to give you 10 seconds.
Meryl Streep.
Meryl Streep. R-Y-L. Meryl Streep. Okay. We're going to start with Oprah. Whenever you are ready, Candace.
Oprah Winfrey is an incredible role model for kids. I don't think that one will be contested as hotly as TUFF. She is a multiple award-winning and nominated person. She has lived the American dream. She rose from rags to riches, and she's just a great classic success story of someone who has lived every dream and now uses her wealth to forward and advance the dreams of other people.
Cool. Kim, Meryl Streep.
Meryl Streep is quintessential in Hollywood. You know, when they talk about younger actresses, they say, who's going to be the next Meryl? Who can live up to the shoes that she's laid out in front of them? Who can fill them? You know, she's defined a generation of actresses, and she's still acting. She's not out of the game yet. She's really just defines Hollywood at the moment.
Okay. 10 seconds, Candace.
Meryl Streep is an incredible actress. I definitely agree with that and can't even argue against it. However, Oprah is a magnate. She's you know, a multi-million-dollar award, you know, person that has earned and has done her due diligence.
Time. Kim.
Oprah built her empire, but it left her so out of touch that when she gave everyone cars, she ignored the fact that they would all have to pay taxes on it and ruined several members of her studio audience. She's out of touch. She lost that root.
Time. Ooh, wow. That ended up being way closer than I thought it was going to be. Okay. Adry, were you able to listen to that?
Yes, and I think Kim's closing was like lethal to the Oprah argument. Because it was all built on the fact that she'd, you know, the rags to riches story, and apparently the riches are, you know, a little detached from reality. I think that was a good comeback, so I give it to Kim.
Tom? Don't forget you're muted, by the way. I can't hear anything you're saying, which I'm sure is fascinating and wonderful. There you go.
I focused in on a different part of the argument, which was that Meryl Streep currently defines Hollywood, and I would like, she's amazing. Currently done besides talking at public events, which is great. I can't think of any current Meryl Streep roles, so that didn't get for me. But the last argument at the end for Kim was dangerous, so I'm torn on it.
Okay. For me, I think both of your initial arguments were very, very strong. So I felt you were even going into the rebuttals. However, I do agree that the Meryl Streep rebuttal from Kim was the stronger of the two, and thus that puts her over top. So Kim, you get the point, which means we are tied up, and we got one more to go. So well done, everybody. This is it. This is for all the marbles, and this is an either-or question. Please let me finish the entire question before you shout out an answer. These two movies are playing in theaters. You can only see one first. Which will it be? Wonder Woman or Spider-Man Homecoming?
Spider-Man Homecoming.
Oh boy, I had trouble hearing who was first on that. Tom?
I only heard Candace. I didn't hear.
Yeah, I heard Homecoming out of Candace, and I started to hear Spider-Man out of Kim. Adry, who did you hear first?
I think it was Candace, but I'm not 100% sure.
Oh, I was going for Wonder Woman right off the bat.
See, there you go.
Oh, did you say Wonder Woman?
Yes.
Oh, then I heard Spider-Man the whole time. Gotcha. Awesome. So Spider-Man versus Wonder Woman. That's perfect. So Candace, we did hear you first then, so you're going to go first. This will decide the game. Whenever you're ready, you may begin.
This is the first Spider-Man movie that actually fits into the MCU, and I think that it's going to be a Spider-Man defining moment. I think that Tom Holland is a really bright, fresh new face, and I think that they're finally going to hopefully get it right. I think they've come really close in the past, and unfortunately we haven't seen a great movie, but this one really seems like it's going to be next level.
Time. Okay. Wonder Woman, Kim.
We've never had a Wonder Woman movie before. It's long overdue, and I'm really excited for the opportunity for the DCEU to finally turn itself around and start putting out good, solid movies on par with their animated works.
You have plenty of time.
Oh, and it just looks like a phenomenal movie. It's something original that we haven't seen before on film, and Spider-Man is just another rehash.
Time. Okay. 10 seconds from Candace.
To rebut the Wonder Woman, I think that Wonder Woman is long overdue, but I don't think that they're going to do it right. The first 5 seconds of the Wonder Woman trailer doesn't just star Wonder Woman. It's not a backstory. It doesn't give you any information about her. She's just there with a man in a leather bikini.
Kim.
Spider-Man is one of the first MCU movies, but it's also going to be one of the only. Sony and Marvel have already said it's a very limited deal, so they're going to execute this, and then he's going to go back to Sony, and they're going to screw him up again. It's another Spider-Man movie. We don't need Wonder Woman.
Oh, this is going to be real close. We're going to start with you, Tom. Who had the better argument?
You know what I'm going to say? I feel bad. Kim, you're a great fighter. I have no faith in DC right now. I want them to prove me wrong.
But based on the arguments,
I'm pointing out Candace.
Candace, you got it. Adry?
I'm conflicted because had Kim been able to respond to Candace's, I would have given her the win hands down. But there was that last bit of the rebuttal that she just didn't have time to reply, and I'm just not sure if that one equals the other. I don't know.
So you're leaning also towards Candace?
I'm split. I think I don't know which one I would give a higher value, so I'm split. Sorry, I'm no help to you.
No, that's okay. Judging is not easy. For sure. It's definitely difficult.
You're the one with the notes.
Yeah. So here's what it comes down to for me. I think you both, again, had really good arguments. Kim didn't use all of her time and then still had a good extra 5 seconds there at the beginning. So, again, your intros were even, but then I think Candace got in a really good swing on Wonder Woman that wasn't really responded to well. I would give it to Candace, and that means, Candace, you win the day. Congratulations. You are the victor on Fan Friction. But, Kim, you did an awesome job today, so thank you so much. I really, really thought you brought an intelligence to the fight. That was really fantastic, so thank you so much.
Yeah,
you did a great job.
I had a great time. Candace and Adry both were phenomenal fighters, and I'm glad that it came all the way down to the last question.
For sure. And Adry, you did a great job, of course, as always, as we expected.
That was super fun. And I think it worked out for the best because I had to, Kid had a meltdown midway through that.
Yeah, right. Trying to do your final arguments.
Thank you for voting me out. let's take seconds and go around the table and just find out where everybody can find you. Kim, why don't we start with you?
Okay, you can find me on Twitter at @Kim Hanley. Nice and easy. It's HANLEY. And I've recently become a new co-host on the Tech Podcast at Tech Podcast 1. It's a Robotech podcast that we're going to have a lot of fun with.
Awesome.
So I'm really excited for that.
Fantastic. And definitely check her out there. Candace, where can we find you?
I am on Twitter at @ThatCandaceGirl, and you can also catch me on Tuesdays at 9 p.m. for American Odds, and every other Monday on Odd Shape Panel right here on TUFF.
Sweet. And Adry, we don't find you much on Twitter, but you are on Twitter.
I suck at checking Twitter. But if you do tweet me, you can add me on Steam. I'm always on Steam playing. You can find me on Hearthstone. That's always a good time. And I will plug Jonathan Youngblood is doing really cool things with movies. Jor-El Blue is doing really good things with movies. Some of my old fan fighters are doing really great things. So if you didn't see the Fan Fight show, go see them and follow them because they're doing really cool stuff, which I don't.
And tell everybody what your Twitter is so they can find you online.
Oh, Serilia, Serilia.
Awesome. And Tom, we already know, but we're going to tell it again. Tell us all about Odd Shape Panel.
The easiest way to find out what Odd Shape Panel is go to our new website at www.oddshapedchannel.com. We have a page for all of our great guests who come on and their content, a bunch of the TUFF content. Big shout out, we have a store set up there for Janine's work, who does all of our logos. So go there and you can see a bit of everybody's stuff. And I'm not going to really plug myself because Candace did such a good job. So tweet at me at Odd Shape Panel.
Awesome. And guys, I would like to take a second to tell you about next week's show, or in 2 weeks, our next show. We're going to do 3 more fans because this is really the reason why we started the channel in the first place. We wanted to give fans a chance to do this kind of format and have fun. So we've picked 3 new people to fight next week, and they are Tom Zambino, Bill Carolla, and Eric Assenmacher, who picked today's question for the the fan question on round 2. So they will be joining us in 2 weeks for one more round of all fan fights, first-time fighters. So please come back and join us for that. It's going to be a lot of fun. Again, I'm Jack Shipley. You can find me at JRS Pitboy 2008 on Twitter. And as always, we do this because we love the Screen Junkies channel and movie fights. This show is brought about because we wanted the experience of fighting on movie fights. If you're not familiar with them, we urge you to check them out. They're really awesome. Their information is in the description below. So please go sign up and take a look. And it's SJ Plus. It's awesome. So other than that, guys, we are done. Another episode of Fan Friction. Thank you so much for joining us on your Sunday. We hope you have a wonderful rest of the weekend, and we will see you all in 2 weeks. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.